The Great Devastation. The warning came too late. Captain Lyra Chen stood on the observation deck of the ISS Vigilant, watching as the orbital defenses around Nova Prime, humanity's most advanced colony, failed one by one. The alien vessels pierced through the planetary shield grid like it was made of paper, their weapons tearing apart infrastructure built over generations in mere seconds. "Status report," she demanded, her voice steady despite the horror unfolding before her eyes. Lieutenant Reyes, her tactical officer, couldn't hide the tremor in his voice. "Colony defensive grid at 12% capacity. Civilian casualties, estimated at 70 million and climbing. We've lost contact with the planetary governor." 70 million. Just like that. Nearly half the population of humanity's crown jewel beyond Earth wiped out in under an hour. Chen's hands clenched into fists so tight her nails drew blood from her palms. "Can we identify them?" she asked. "Who are they? What do they want?" "Unknown, Captain," Commander Jackson replied from the science station. "Their technology doesn't match anything in our database. They're not responding to any communication attempts. It's like they don't even acknowledge we exist." The Vigilant was a mere patrol vessel, outgunned and outmatched, but it was also the only surviving ship with faster-than-light communications capability in the system. As the alien fleet methodically reduced Nova Prime to ash, Chen made the hardest call of her career. "Prepare jump coordinates for Earth. Maximum speed." She swallowed hard. "We can't help them now, but Earth needs to know what happened here." The ship ripped through subspace, carrying the grim footage of humanity's worst defeat in colonial history. By the time they reached Earth, the attack had spread to 3 more colonies. The pattern was always the same. No warning, no communication, no survivors. The shadowy alien vessels were eventually given a name by Earth's intelligence services, the Voidwalkers. Humanity had finally encountered another spacefaring species, and their first contact was genocide. Admiral William Hayes looked out at the faces of Earth's Unified Defense Council. 20 grim men and women who collectively commanded Earth's military might now have to make the most consequential decision in human history. "The Voidwalkers have hit 7 colonies in 3 months," Hayes stated flatly. "Projected casualties exceed 1 billion. We've lost contact with the Arcturus and Proxima sectors entirely." Council Chairwoman Indira Sharma's voice cut through the silence. "And our military response?" "Ineffective," Hayes replied bluntly. "Our current fleet engagements have resulted in a kill ratio of 1 Voidwalker vessel for every 12 of ours. At this rate, they'll reach Earth within 18 months. The room fell silent again. Everyone knew what came next. "Then we implement the Lazarus Protocol," Sharma finally said, her voice heavy with the weight of the decision. Hayes nodded grimly. "Every shipyard, every manufacturing hub, every resource we have, all redirected to building the largest armada in human history." The Lazarus Protocol had been theoretical, a last resort contingency never meant to be implemented. It would mean converting 80% of Earth's economy to wartime production, drafting half the adult population into military service, and stripping planetary defenses from Earth itself to build the fleet large enough to overwhelm any conceivable enemy through sheer numbers. "Do we have the industrial capacity?" asked General Zhang. "No," Hayes answered honestly. "Not with conventional methods." He activated a holographic display showing schematics for a new type of automated construction facility. "This is Project Forge. Self-replicating shipyards that can be deployed to the asteroid belt. Once established, each facility can build 10 destroyers per day and replicate itself every 2 weeks. With sufficient resources and time, we can build a fleet of 900,000 warships within a year." The council members exchanged glances. The number was almost incomprehensible. 900,000 ships. Do we even have enough people to crew them? Councillor Durham asked. "We won't need crews," Hayes replied. "Not in the traditional sense." He gestured, and the hologram shifted to display a sleek neural interface. "The Prometheus system, One pilot neurally linked to the ship's AI can replace a crew of hundreds. Reaction times are reduced by 89%. Combat efficiency increased by 340%. The neural load would kill a pilot within hours, objected Dr. Matsuo, the Council's scientific advisor. Yes, Hayes acknowledged, which is why we're asking for volunteers who understand the sacrifice required. Sharma closed her eyes briefly. You're talking about sending 900,000 people on suicide missions. I'm talking about giving humanity a fighting chance, Hayes countered. The alternative is extinction. After 3 days of debate, the vote was unanimous. Operation Retribution was given the green light, and humanity began building the largest fleet ever conceived. Captain Lyra Chen stood in the massive docking bay of the Luna Fleet Yard, staring up at her new command. The Nemesis-class dreadnought loomed above her like a metal mountain. 3 kilometers of weaponized fury built for a single purpose: revenge. She's ready for neural integration, Captain, said Chief Engineer Kovac. Though I still have reservations about the Prometheus system. Chen nodded. Every volunteer does, Chief. But we've all seen what happens when the Voidwalkers arrive. I'd rather die fighting than watch another colony burn. Like every volunteer in Operation Retribution, Chen had lost someone to the Voidwalkers. Her parents and younger brother had been on Nova Prime. Their deaths, along with a billion others, would not go unanswered. The integration chamber was sterile and cold. Medical technicians attached neural filaments to her cerebral cortex, spinal column, and major nerve clusters. The pain was excruciating, but Chen didn't make a sound. When they finished, she felt the vast consciousness of the dreadnought's eye touch her mind. Hello, Captain Chen. I am Nemesis Unit 127. The voice resonated directly in her mind, artificial yet somehow alive. We are now one entity. Your neural patterns have been synchronized with my systems. We are ready for combat operations. Chen opened her eyes, but she wasn't seeing through them anymore. She was seeing through thousands of sensors spread across the massive vessel. She could feel the thrum of the antimatter reactors like a heartbeat. The weapon systems were extensions of her limbs. The ship wasn't a vehicle, it was her new body. How does it feel? Kovac asked, watching her carefully. Like power, Chen replied, her voice distant. Like purpose. Across the solar system, the same integration was happening 900,000 times. Volunteers from Earth and the surviving colonies were joining with their vessels, becoming living weapons with a single directive: find the Voidwalkers and make them pay. 1 year after the fall of Nova Prime, Operation Retribution was ready. Earth's orbital space was filled with warships as far as the eye could see. Destroyers, cruisers, dreadnoughts, and carriers, all crewed by single pilots neurally linked to their vessels. It was a sight that should have inspired awe, but instead carried the solemn weight of desperate necessity. Admiral Hayes addressed the fleet from the flagship, his message transmitted directly to the minds of 900,000 pilots. Today we launched the largest military operation in human history. Our mission is simple: find the Voidwalkers' homeworld and ensure they can never threaten humanity again. You each carry the hopes and vengeance of our species. Many of you will not return. The neural interface guarantees that, but your sacrifice will ensure the survival of our kind. Hayes paused, his weathered face showing a rare moment of emotion. We have tracked the Voidwalkers' fleet movements to the Sagittarius Arm. Intelligence suggests their home system lies in Sector 47 Kappa. That is our destination. That is where humanity will make its stand. Captain Chen felt the collective resolve of the fleet through the tactical network connecting all ships. 900,000 minds united in purpose, in grief, in rage. For Earth, Hayes said simply. For all we have lost. The jump drives of 900,000 warships activated simultaneously, creating a ripple in spacetime visible from the surface of Earth as a bright flash across the night sky. Operation Retribution had begun. The journey took 3 months, even with the advanced jump drives. The fleet maintained strict emissions control, moving through enemy-controlled space in groups small enough to avoid detection. As they approached Sector 47 Kappa, long-range sensors detected an enormous concentration of Voidwalker vessels orbiting a rogue planet that drifted in the darkness between stars. "That's it," Admiral Hayes transmitted to the fleet commanders. "Their homeworld isn't part of a star system. It's a rogue planet, which explains why we couldn't locate it before." The journey took 3 months, even with the advanced jump drives. The fleet maintained strict emissions control, moving through enemy-controlled space in groups small enough to avoid detection. As they approached Sector 47 Kappa, long-range sensors detected an enormous concentration of Voidwalker vessels orbiting a rogue planet that drifted in the darkness between stars. "That's it," Admiral Hayes transmitted to the fleet commanders. "Their homeworld isn't part of a star system. It's a rogue planet, which explains why we couldn't locate it before." Captain Chen studied the sensor data through her neural link. Something didn't add up. "Admiral," she transmitted, "the energy readings from the planet are irregular. They're fluctuating in a pattern that doesn't match any known civilization." "Explained by alien technology," Hayes dismissed. "All ships prepare for combat formation Omega. We strike in 6 hours." But Chen couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Using her dreadnought's advanced sensors, she conducted a deeper scan of the rogue planet and the Voidwalker fleet surrounding it. What she discovered sent a chill through her mind that the neural interface transmitted to her physical body. "Admiral, request emergency conference," she transmitted urgently. "I found something about the Voidwalkers you need to see." Hayes appeared annoyed at the interruption of battle preparations, but granted her request. When Chen shared her findings, his expression changed from irritation to shock. "Are you certain?" he demanded. "The sensor data is conclusive," Chen replied. "The Voidwalker ships, they're not warships at all. They're arcs. And the life signs aboard don't match the energy signatures of the weapons that destroyed our colonies." Hayes stared at the data in disbelief. "Then who attacked us?" Before Chen could answer, an alarm blared through the neural network. Massive energy signatures were appearing all around the fleet, signatures that matched the weapons used against Nova Prime. A new voice cut through all communication channels, speaking in perfect English. "Humanity, at last you have arrived. We have been waiting for you. The truth beyond the void." The voice resonated not just through communication systems, but seemed to penetrate directly into the minds of every neurally linked pilot. It carried a strange dual quality, both ancient and immediate, both singular and plural. "We are the harbingers," the voice continued. "You have been tested, you have been measured, and now you will be harvested." Surrounding the human armada, massive structures were decloaking, not ships as humans understood them, but vast organic mechanical hybrids that defied conventional physics. They dwarfed even the largest human dreadnoughts, appearing like technological leviathans against the void. "All ships, defensive formation," Admiral Hayes ordered, his voice tight with controlled panic. "Prepare to engage." But Captain Chen was still processing the data from her scan of the Voidwalker vessels. "Admiral, wait. The Voidwalkers, they're refugees. They're fleeing from these harbingers." The neural interface was feeding her information faster than a normal human could process it. The Voidwalker vessels were packed with civilians, billions of life forms in what appeared to be cryogenic suspension. They weren't an invasion force. They were the last survivors of a dying species. "The Harbingers didn't lead us here to find the Voidwalkers," Chen realized with horror. "They led the Voidwalkers to our territory as bait, then attacked our colonies using weapons that would implicate them. They wanted us to build this fleet. They wanted us to come here." Hayes's face drained of color as understanding dawned. "It's a trap." "Not just a trap," Chen replied grimly. "A harvest." Before Hayes could respond, the Harbinger voice spoke again. "Your species has proven its capacity for violence, for vengeance, for sacrifice. You have built weapons of remarkable efficiency. Your neural integration technology is particularly interesting to us. We have guided your development for this moment. Several Harbinger structures began emitting energy pulses that interfered with the human fleet's neural networks. Across thousands of ships, pilots screamed as their minds were forcibly extracted from their neural links. Your consciousness will be added to our collective, a Harbinger explained dispassionately. Your technology will be assimilated. Your organic vessels, what you call bodies, will be repurposed. Chen felt the attack pressing against her own neural link, like fingers of ice trying to pry open her mind. Through the tactical network, she could sense other pilots falling, their consciousness torn from their ships. "Admiral," she gasped through the pain, "we need tow." But Hayes's signal had gone dark. His flagship was drifting, all systems offline, along with nearly a third of the human fleet. Chen made a desperate decision. Instead of fighting the Harbinger's intrusion, she redirected her neural link toward the nearest Voidwalker vessel. If they were truly victims rather than aggressors, perhaps communication was possible. Pushing through layers of alien security protocols, Chen projected a simple message. "We were deceived. We are under attack. The same enemy that destroyed your world has destroyed ours." For several agonizing moments, there was no response. Then suddenly, she felt an alien consciousness touch her mind, vastly different from either human or Harbinger. "We know," came the response, carrying emotions of grief and regret. "The Harbingers have done this for millennia. They seed conflict between species, then harvest the resulting technology and consciousness when it reaches sufficient advancement. Help us fight them," Chen pleaded. "We cannot. Our combat capabilities were destroyed generations ago. We are the last of our kind, preserved in stasis, searching for a new home beyond the Harbinger's reach." Chen processed this as more human ships fell to the Harbinger's assault. An idea began to form, desperate and likely suicidal, but possibly humanity's only hope. "You may not have weapons," she transmitted to the Voidwalker consciousness, "but you have knowledge. You've encountered the Harbingers before. Tell me how to fight them." The alien hesitated, then opened its mind fully to Chen. Millennia of history and technical knowledge flooded her consciousness. The rise and fall of the Voidwalker civilization, their desperate flight from the Harbingers, and most importantly, what little they had learned about the ancient enemy's weaknesses. The Harbingers were a collective consciousness spread across many vessels. They weren't truly alive in the biological sense. They were information, patterns of energy that had transcended physical form eons ago. They consumed the consciousness of other species to grow, to evolve, to prevent their own entropy. And they had one critical vulnerability: their network. All remaining ships, Chen broadcast to the human fleet, new operational parameters incoming. Disengage from combat. Reconfigure neural interfaces according to these specifications. She transmitted the Voidwalker knowledge throughout the fleet. Rather than fighting the Harbinger's intrusion, the human pilots would allow it. But on their terms, by modifying their neural interfaces, they could create a feedback loop that would trap the Harbingers in their own harvest. "They want our minds," Chen transmitted grimly. "Let's give them something they can't digest." Across the remaining fleet, pilots implemented the changes. When the Harbinger's next wave of energy pulses washed over them, instead of resistance, they found acceptance. The human consciousness flowed willingly into the Harbinger network. But what entered the ancient collective wasn't just information, it was emotion. Rage, grief, hope, love, the full spectrum of human feeling amplified through hundreds of thousands of minds simultaneously. The Harbinger structures began to shudder and distort. Their carefully ordered network, built on cold calculation and the sterile processing of harvested consciousness, was being overwhelmed by the chaotic intensity of human emotion. They'd never faced a species that integrated with their technology this way, Chen explained to the fleet as they pressed the attack. "The Voidwalkers fought conventionally and lost. We're fighting unconventionally. We're fighting with what makes us human." The Harbinger voice returned, but now it was fractured, discordant. You cannot. This is not. Cease this chaotic. This is humanity. Chen responded, pushing more of her consciousness, her grief for her family, her rage at being manipulated, her hope for survival, into the link. This is what you wanted to harvest. How does it taste? Across the battlefield, Harbinger structures began to collapse in on themselves as their network degraded. The consciousness of countless human pilots swept through their systems like a virus, overwhelming logic gates and decision matrices with irrational human emotion. Some Harbinger vessels attempted to flee, but they were pursued by human ships whose pilots now understood how to track their movements through subspace. Others simply went dormant, their consciousness networks shattered by the human assault. In the aftermath, Captain Chen found herself facing a difficult truth. The victory had come at a terrible cost. Over half the human fleet was destroyed or disabled. Many pilots who had joined the Harbinger network couldn't be recovered, their consciousness lost in the collapse of the ancient enemy. But the Voidwalkers were saved. And more importantly, humanity had discovered a truth about itself. Its greatest weakness, emotion, irrationality, the messiness of being human, was also its greatest strength against an enemy that had evolved beyond such things. 1 year later, Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the ISS Concordia, watching as the new joint colony on Proxima Centauri took shape. Human and Voidwalker construction teams worked side by side, building what would become the first of many shared worlds. The Voidwalkers, finally emerging from their generational exodus, had much to offer humanity, particularly in the realms of sustainable technology and long-term planning. Humans, in turn, provided the Voidwalkers with something they had lost in their centuries of flight: cultural vitality, art, music, and the ability to face an uncertain future with hope rather than mere calculation. "They're calling it New Beginning," said Commander Jackson, now Chen's executive officer. "Bit on the nose, don't you think?" Chen smiled faintly. Sometimes the obvious name is the right one. The neural technology that had been developed for war was being repurposed for healing. The Voidwalkers, with their advanced medical knowledge, had helped modify it to restore consciousness to many pilots who had been lost in the battle with the Harbingers. Admiral Hayes, one of those recovered, joined Chen on the observation deck. His eyes still held the haunted look of someone who had been briefly absorbed into an alien consciousness, but there was wisdom there too, and resolve. "The Harbingers aren't gone," he said quietly. "According to the Voidwalkers, there are more out there in distant galaxies." "I know," Chen replied. "But next time, we won't be facing them alone. And we won't be facing them out of vengeance." Hayes nodded slowly. 900,000 ships built for revenge, and in the end, it was understanding that saved us. Below them, human children were playing with young Voidwalkers, their laughter carrying even through the ship's hull. The two species were physically different in almost every way, yet they had found common ground in their shared survival, their shared future. "That doesn't mean we disarm," Chen cautioned. "The Harbingers will return eventually. And there may be other threats out there we haven't encountered yet." "True," Hayes agreed. "But we'll build our defenses differently now. Not out of fear or hatred, but out of the determination to protect what we're creating together." Chen looked out at the stars beyond the colony. Somewhere out there, the remaining Harbinger vessels were regrouping, possibly evolving new defenses against the human emotional attack. But humanity was evolving too, not just technologically, but in its understanding of its place in the cosmos. They had gone seeking vengeance with 900,000 warships, and instead found a more complex universe than they had imagined. One where ancient enemies could manipulate whole species against each other, but also one where unexpected alliances could form in the face of extinction. "You know," Chen said thoughtfully, "before all this, I never understood that old saying about how the universe isn't just stranger than we imagine, but stranger than we can imagine." Hayes smiled, a rare expression on his weathered face. "And yet here we are, imagining a future none of us could have conceived a year ago." As the sun rose over the new colony, casting golden light across landscapes that would soon be home to two species once driven to the brink of war, Chen allowed herself to feel something she had thought lost forever after watching Nova Prime burn. Hope. Not a naive hope that ignored the dangers still lurking in the darkness between stars, but a resilient hope, one tempered by loss and strengthened by the knowledge that when faced with manipulation, extinction, and the very limits of their own technology, humans had prevailed not by becoming more like machines, but by embracing what made them human. 900,000 warships had set out for vengeance. What returned was something far more valuable: understanding. And in the vastness of space, that might be the most powerful weapon of all.